All right, motion carried on the consent agenda.
That's a lot better.
Yeah, that's better.
Much
Okay,
better.
good. If it gets worse, let us know. We'll move on to item number 5, presentation of the 2019 annual report.
We have with us today Mr. Ryan Thomas with our audit firm, and we're going to share the screen. And Ryan, if you would update us on the 2019 annual financial audit that was presented to the budget committee previously.
Yeah, I will.
Are you ready, Ryan?
Yes. Do you want me to share my screen?
Well, I put it up here. I can flip through it for you if you like.
Okay, that'll work. So I'm going to start on page 2, the auditor's opinion. And here we just state that in our opinion, the financial statements referred to are materially correct. So there were no material misstatements noted. And then we're going to skip down to the balance sheet on page 8. And here, page 8.
Kathy, always see, I'm sorry, Brian. Kathy, always
Oh, yeah.
the screen is your list of files.
Oh, Brian.
Thanks, China.
Well, directors, everyone should have a copy in your packets that was sent out. If you would follow along, and I apologize for the difficulties.
Brian, go ahead.
All right. So looking at page 8, the balance sheet, one thing that we do is we'll total operating expenses for the year and divide that into a daily rate, and then divide it into that unassigned fund balance number towards the bottom in the first column of $1,085,000. And so at December 31st, 2019, Prairie Lands had 131 days of fund balance, of unassigned fund balance at year end. And then skipping down to the next page, page 9, your total expenses increased approximately $2 million from the prior year, most of which was due to the capital outlay account, for the new building. So nothing unusual there. And then going down to page 10, budget versus actual, your actual revenues were about 40,000 over your budgeted amount, and then your actual expenditures were about 450,000 over your budgeted amount. There again, the overage being due to the capital outlay, so that was budgeted for there. And the rest of the report is just the notes to the financial statements, and it provides greater detail to the amounts that you see on the financial statements themselves. But there's nothing significant to go over there. So, does anyone have any questions or comments?
Anybody have any questions on the audit?
If there's no further questions, the budget committee did meet, as I mentioned earlier, on April the 14th and received this report from Mr. Thomas, included in the financial statements that were completed as well by Yeldell, Wilson, and Lee. And so with that, I think it would be my recommendation to this board that we accept this report as presented.
Do I hear a motion? A motion by Ken Smith to approve our 2019 audit. Second. Seconded by John Curtis. Proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye. 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 Those opposed? Motion carried.
And I'll just kind of take over here. And again, I apologize for some of our network issues. We keep getting network bandwidth is low, so we're working off the Wi-Fi in the conference room. So we'll try to get these kinks worked out in the future. But moving on to the next item, administrative and financials. Like many of your central offices throughout the state, staff has been continuing to operate, and although we are closed to the public currently, we are allowing individuals to drop by necessary documents or payments by appointment only. A couple of other things going on in the district. All staff recently completed the past a state-approved security awareness training program provided online by the Texas Alliance of Groundwater District. You'll recall it was under House Bill 3834 last session, that all employees, and depending on the level of involvement within the district, online database, so forth, these employees are required to take this training annually, and therefore we have now calendared that this will be an annual renewal process. And with that, we'll move on to the first quarter investment report. I'm going to try one more time to share that. Do y'all see it on your screen? Can somebody tell me what you see?
No, I can only, I see it.
Well, no, I think again, all you're seeing is the thumb drive list for some reason.
There.
This won't kick over to the next page. So again, I apologize. In your packet, there is a first quarter investment report prepared by staff. As it shows on this report, investments dated through January 1st, 2020 through March 31st are sufficient securities have been pledged to cover the district's investment for its operating fund, money market, construction, and certificates of deposit accounts. All investments are in compliance with public fund investment strategies. And again, it would therefore be my recommendation to ask the board to accept this investment report as presented.
Do I hear a motion? If Smith moves that we approve the investment report, do I hear a second? I'll second. Martin McPherson seconded. We'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve the investment account, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried.
Moving on to the next item is discuss, consider, take action to approve resolution 20-003, amending fiscal year 2020 operating budget and authorize the general manager to take actions necessary to implement said resolution. We have included in your packet a resolution and a copy of the amended budget. Following review of the district's capital outlay budget for 2020, management discovered a numerical error in the building construction budget for architect consulting expenses that appears to be an oversight, administrative oversight when projecting architectural design fees for 2020. $15,000 was originally approved in the 2020 budget for architect consulting costs that should have been $75,000. So that is a difference of $60,000 that needs to be addressed in the amendment. In addition, remaining loan funds of $1.2 million were available to be drawn in 2020 for construction and completion of the office facility, building, and shop, and these funds were not captured in other income in the operating budget to offset these capital outlay expenses. The budget committee met on April 4th to discuss and review these draft amendments, and after getting consideration, the committee recommends for the board to consider these amendments for possible approval in the 2020 budget. And if you will look at that resolution, it does detail the different amendments, proposals to the budget that would adequately address this. And I'll be glad to take any questions.
Charles and I did meet as we met with Kathy on this. Oversight that could happen. You know, we did have a transition during this period as well, and when you're transitioning, things happen as well. But Brian assured me that there was nothing glaring here on any of this stuff, and I would recommend approval of the resolution. Am I not coming through?
Yes. Is that a motion, Maurice?
It was. I'm not sure who heard it.
I heard it. I think we might have lost Kathy.
Kathy, y'all are muted.
I'll second Maurice's motion.
Okay, we had a second. We apologize. We lost signal, and when it came back, it had muted.
We're losing you again, Kathy.
Kathy, Maurice made a motion to approve the resolution. I believe Randall seconded.
Yes.
We got it. move on to item 7, update on public outreach activities and educational efforts. Sinclair Newby.
Kathy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Did we take a vote?
I didn't hear a vote on the motion.
We did take one. For some reason, y'all couldn't hear us when we took the vote.
Okay, well, we can hear you now. Can we take a vote?
We'll retake it if we need. Okay, let's take that vote again. So we have a motion for Maurice Osborne on the resolution 20-003. That motion was seconded by Randall Kurt. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We'll move on to item 7, Sinclair Newby.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just a little update with everything that's been going on. I did have quite a slate of events that were scheduled through the end of March and all through April and even in May. Of course, those have been I'm keeping in contact with other organizations that we had events scheduled with. So we're keeping in touch. Some of us are hopeful to try and reschedule for maybe later in the summer, even the fall. So trying to stay positive and keep those relationships going. So hopefully we can try and have some more of those events later on in the year. One of the major projects during April was finalizing the annual report with some of the final groundwater production numbers. We were waiting on just a few reporters to get that number in. So we got that in, completed the annual report, and those hard copies were distributed to county judges and commissioners and also state officials on April 24th. Also released the spring 2020 edition of our Prairie Lands E-Line newsletter. So that was released on April 22nd. It featured articles about springtime water conservation, rainwater harvesting, a highlight on the Texas Well Owners Network, also some highlights from the annual report, as well as upcoming events, meetings, some state and local water news. So the next newsletter will go out in July. So I'll be working on some articles and content for that in the next few weeks. I've also been coordinating with the county extension agents regarding the 4-H Water Ambassador Program. The applications for that program were due on May 1st. And to my understanding, they should be notifying applicants right now. I believe they were supposed to start notifying them on Friday. So I know that David is starting to reach out and let some of those applicants know. I did receive word that we have a ambassador in Johnson County now. His first name is Grayson, and I look forward to meeting him and working with him. We also should have 1 applicant in Ellis County and 2 applicants from Hill County. So I'll be following up again to see what the final word is on their application status. But we do have, every year we've seen more and more ambassadors apply for this program. So I'm excited to have 1 in Johnson County now. For this week, I've got a press release about rainwater harvesting that I'm planning to distribute to my media contacts later today. And then I also have a demonstration video that I filmed in the trailer. And Johnson County and Hill County are going to host a virtual water day event and asked us to be involved in that. So we will have a video of our aquifer model and then our indoor water conservation that will be included in those virtual water days. I've got a couple events that are on the radar. They're tentative right now, assuming that we are able to have these events. Things look like they're kind of moving towards that direction as they kind of ease up on restrictions, but a presentation for Grandview Lions Club. Kathy and I both will be presenting at the Johnson County Association of Realtors Luncheon on June 11th. I also have a presentation scheduled for the Midlothian Rotary Club on June 23rd. and then a Johnson County 4-H Natural Resources Day on July 7th. We'll have the water education trailer out there. The last thing I want to mention, due to these circumstances, a lot of people have been at home and more have been on their computer, social media. So compiling analytics of our social media platforms for March and April, we've definitely seen an increase in the amount of engagements and traffic that we're having. Definitely our LinkedIn page as well has done the best that it's done since we created that platform. And our Twitter account, the posts between March and April were seen over 6,000 times. So even though we haven't been able to have these in-person events, our digital media is doing very well, given that people are at home and engaging a little more on social media. So I'm happy to entertain any questions or clarify anything if there's anything someone would like to know more about.
Anyone have questions for Sinclair?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will move on to item number 8. Groundwater management area. So we had a meeting on March 15th. May 15th, with GMA 8 and James brought us up to date on the numbers that all the GCDs provided, and there was a discussion also of why we need to include the drought record in all of this. And James, do you want to chime in now and kind of give us a little more update on it?
Can do. I've got a short presentation if y'all have time for that. Can one person?
Yes.
All right, here we go. Let me try to share a screen. Kathy, I'm not sure. Y'all cannot share screen while the other participant is sharing. Okay.
Just a second.
All right.
Now try it again.
All right, hold on just a second.
It's up, Jim.
Can you? All right, y'all can see that?
Yes.
All right, here we go. Yeah, okay, so looking at run 11, that's what we're calling this in GMA 8, kind of the update of run 10 from the last round of planning using the Northern Trinity Woodbine GAM and trying to get a DFC mag run done. We've received pumping updates from Upper Trinity GCD. Y'all have seen most of this. Southern Trinity GCD, obviously we changed in Prairie Lands, we changed the vertical distribution of pumping. And then more recently, Central Texas GCD, all of that was funded through the GMA contract. And then some work that Clearwater wanted to do, including some changes in Travis and Williamson County, which are, just north of Austin, pretty far away from y'all. That was funded separately by Clearwater and folded into the GMA 8 work. So just remembering some of the details of Run 11, reminding y'all, these mags won't find their way into the state water plan until 2027. So that's why it's important to kind of set the stage for how you're planning into the future, and why we've done what we've done to kind of make sure that our DFCs and mags and management plans and rules are all consistent. And we'll talk a little bit about achievability here in a little bit. But just a summary on Run 11 again. It begins in 2010. We didn't change that. The model was extended out to 2080. And you know, we use the same data in 2070 as for that next decade, because that's what the regional water planning requires, and got rid of that little leap year problem by taking that 366-day year out, and so the MAG won't be, you know, having minor changes from year to year. Pumping has been updated with all the info from the GCDs. The drought of record, as Charles mentioned, was included from 2078 to 2080. And we'll provide these files to the Water Development Board probably after the next GMA meeting to make sure that they get, you know, a chance to look at that early. So if we look at y'all's, at the changes in the pumping, Upper Trinity, if you look at that very bottom row there, the Run 10, and that's the fourth column, they had their predictive pumping for future years at 37, almost 38,000. Their adjustment was to increase that by 11,000 acre feet a year. So they're right at 49,000 acre feet, lower right-hand corner, in all four of their districts. And you can kind of see the distribution and what the changes were there. So obviously in the southern part of their area, they may have a little impact on you. Your changes are going to have a little impact on them and other folks around you. Southern Trinity didn't really change anything for the future. If you look at that last row between, you know, for 2020 through 2080, they didn't change any predictive pumping or future pumping that they estimate, but they did want to change the pumping. They reduced their pumping. And this is the county, this is McLennan County, just to the south of Hill. So they reduced their pumping in the 10 previous years based on their, you know, best estimates and reporting that they've done. So that actually has, you know, probably has a little bit of an impact to lessen the drawdown, but in y'all's area and their county, but not really that much. There's other offsetting factors, including some increases around that will make a difference more than that. Y'all are familiar, I believe, with the Prairie Lands changes we made. If you look at the Run 10 in column 2, the total at the bottom was 16,938. On the lower right-hand corner, it's still the same, but we changed the vertical distribution and brought more pumping into the Pearsall and the Austin. Y'all have seen that at previous meetings. Clearwater changes weren't that big in total. Run 10 total, you know, 9248, and it just changed by 27 acre feet. And again, some vertical distribution changes to vertical distribution there for them that they have done some work on, much like Prairie Lands did. Central Texas, again, some minor changes, and again, mostly a vertical shift. Travis County, a little bit of an increase there. And that was again due, there's not a district in Travis County or Williamson County, the two counties we're going to talk about here and in the next slide, but Clearwater being their next closest geographic GCD decided to take a look at that, did some work of their own to try to better estimate and vertically shift that pumping in the model as well. Williamson County, similarly, not a huge change there, but a little bit of an increase, and then the vertical shift also. So you had some, you know, minor tweaks here and there, and those all have an impact on counties around them, and obviously in their own county and counties around them. So what we're going to start by looking at just the differences between Run 10 and Run 11, and we're going to compare 2070 results. Run 10 just went to 2070. Run 11, even though it goes to 2080, we're going to compare 2070 results, apples to apples, as best we can. Blue negative values actually indicate higher water and less drawdown. Red values indicate higher drawdowns. And that's typically what we're going to see here based on conglomeration of all the changes in pumping. So if we start, we're just going to look at all the counties and the changes, or in other words, the increases in drawdown or decreases in drawdown in blue. These are the first counties in alphabetical order. Let's go to one you're probably more interested in. Here's your counties there highlighted in yellow are obviously Prairielands counties, and you can see that the vertical shift in pumping that you all have done increases drawdown, generally speaking, and that, you know, there's a lot of factors in that. Even though you didn't increase pumping, you're bringing pumping into, you know, different layers, and that increases drawdown in the Austin and you know, Twin Mountain, Travis Peak generally in your area is where you see most of that change. And depending on, you know, that breakdown of the amount of area in the hydrogeologic regions, you know, it kind of depends on what you see in the Twin Mountain. I won't go into great detail there, but you know, you're basically seeing about 60, 80 feet increase in drawdown in the Austin due to that shift vertically, which makes sense, and that's probably, you know, about a foot a year more than what you'd had before with that shift. And then so there's 3 of the 4 counties. Then if you look at Somerville, you'll see you actually got a little bit of an increase in water levels and less drawdown in the Hensel, and then more drawdown again there in the Austin or the conglomerate Travis Peak. And if you look at your final runs, run 11 and the final, you know, total drawdown that we're predicting in 2080, and look at the counties, then you can kind of see that here. 3, you know, for the Travis Peak, you know, grouped together, Hensel, Austin, Pearsall, you're looking at 380. Hill in Ellis County, 350 or 365, excuse me, in Hill County, 235 in Johnson, 64 in Somerville. You can kind of see that there. I think y'all, I mean, there may be a few tweaks from the last time y'all looked at this, but generally similar results as what we had before. So we don't expect any more changes on run 11, but all the districts' homework was to take this back home with them, make sure they didn't have any final tweaks, and we'll go from there. What we did, we covered all the 9 factors. We talked about this a little bit over the last couple of meetings. In November, we covered the first 3, then February, at the GM8 meeting, we covered the next 3, and then in the meeting last week, we covered socioeconomic and DFC feasibility. So I'm just going to spend just a couple of minutes there. The achievability of the feasibility of achieving a DFC, thank you, is in my opinion, as a hydrogeologist, there's a physical achievability. And is that physically possible? Jim Conkrat might be remembering in different places around the state over the years, we've had examples of districts that wanted DFCs that were physically impossible according to the GAM, and they had to modify things. So when we look at physical achievability of a DFC, one county to another, one district to another, that's generally, we can generally get a pretty good read on that by using the GAM. It's not going to be perfect, but allows you to see if one district wants 0 drawdown and another one wants 500 foot right next to it, it may not work, and so the GAM kind of helps you figure that out. And then there's regulatory achievability. And the question, I think some of the questions there, can the DFC be achieved via the groundwater management plan and the rules, and does the regulated community and stakeholders agree with the management approach required to achieve the DFC? And so your question in Prairielands is, do you have a management plan, and do you have approved rules. And in the case, of course, there is yes. And obviously those DFCs then play together with the management plan and the rules, and implementation of all of that helps you to reach the DFCs. The bigger balancing act in Chapter 36 is basically balancing the highest practical production with conservation and preservation, and that's the big overarching goal of desired future conditions. We've gone through this last slide a couple times. We are still with this tweaked run 11. We are still very close to that dashed line. We haven't recreated this slide since the last round of planning, but if just as a reminder, y'all looked at public water supply wells, you looked at impacts on public water supply wells with the runs and DFCs, and kind of picked some middle ground that had enough water for growth, but not so much that you killed a whole bunch of public water supply wells and had major impacts. And so just wanted to kind of remind y'all of that as you're out talking to folks about how you manage water in the district. I think this is a real big, simple perspective that a lot of people might be able to grasp. And so that's why we talk about it a lot, because there is a balancing act with the work you do and the requirements of Chapter 36. And that is all I've got. I'll take questions if you have any.
Does anybody have any questions of James?
Could I get that presentation electronically? Just a PDF?
Yes, sir. I'll PDF that and send it to Kathy. She can put it on the website and get it to all of y'all.
Okay, thank you.
James, can you unshare?
I'm sorry. Oh, am I? Okay. I'm sorry. Let me try to get this back to you here. Stop share. How about that? Got it?
Good job.
All right.
Thank you, James. Thank you, James. Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 9. I'll turn it over to Kathy.
Can y'all hear me? Okay, moving on to 9, General Manager's report. A little update on our historic use permit applications. Staff has been working very diligent to go back to these older applications and match up field technical report assessments with documentation that we have. We're finding out that, there are a few unknown wells that are appearing that might be wells not in use, that systems have submitted in their application. We're having to do backtracking on a few of those wells to get the recorded information, but we did meet with Ron Sledge and another associate from his office the other day to kind of talk about the progress that we have forward on beginning a more thorough technical review. As I kind of expected, a lot of these applications are going to take a little more time just because of the time frame of the historical use permit, where the district came into creation in 2009, and we are taking permitted recorded information prior to that, trying to get good documentation on that to substantiate those files and turning it to be a little bit more tedious, time consuming on our part, but we're working with these permittees to try to help them, direct them where they might find some of it. And, once we get kind of all of those kind of questions answered, I think then we'll be sitting down and kind of finalize some of those last attempt to clean it up before we, take on the aggressiveness of the technical review, the final recommendation to the board. Moving on to status report on the building. Modern Construction reports that they are in the final stages of completing the building and shop construction. Irrigation work has begun and they expect to complete all landscaping with minus the cistern at the end of this week. I was out there yesterday and I guess they're probably a little more hopeful than I can envision at this time, but we'll see. They will be pouring the foundation for the cistern hopefully this week as well, even though delivery is not expected for another 2 weeks. McGee did tell me that they will be walking the project, I believe it's end of this week, with the contractors and doing the first punch list on things. Cleaning was supposed to be out there last week, and maybe it's not as thorough as final cleaning, I'm not sure, but it wouldn't pass my standards. But hopefully you'll get, spruced up a little more. It's really a lot of small item tickets that are remaining over the next few weeks. Some of that is waiting for supplies that are being held up due to shipping restrictions during this COVID-19. But it does look like, it's about to wrap up. With that said, we still need to finalize purchasing furniture and so forth for the office, but knowing that our lease is through August here at our district, we're not in a hurry to vacate this space, and this allows time to get it all set up and move in less rush. One of the things I wanted to point out to the board is following the approval today of pay apps on construction. Total cost completed to date of the project is 2.7, with the retainage of 136,000, and the balance to finish is just barely over 400,000. With that, I'll take any questions. If anyone should have, something they would like to visit with me about, I do encourage you, if you're in town, please come by. I'll be glad to take you out there and give you a tour of the facility. I think you'll be proud of the building that you and the former GM put together for this district. So I appreciate the opportunity to get into this state. And with that, I also wanted to note in our packet that we are working with a few permittees or well owners on some of the deficiencies. It really has, the list has not changed from previous necessarily, besides just some, courtesy reminders that proper meter installation is required and those steps must be taken. So, if that is listed in the enforcement, it is only so it can be on our tracking list to make sure staff is following that to ensure that the compliance is met. We do have one well owner that, unfortunately due to some financial restraints, we're struggling, but we have worked out a payment option, but that may be getting a little tight, even, the consideration we've given. So hopefully we don't have to take further steps, but we're staying in communication. As many of you know, all the conferences that I've been sharing with you have more or less come to a dead halt. The PWCA conference scheduled for next month, they have canceled the actual conference itself, but we'll be holding a virtual conference over the same period of time. Hopefully this will encourage more districts to have the opportunity to have more employees attend due to the cost savings on travel and restoration. If directors feel like this is something they would like to participate in as well, let me know. We're glad to get you registered. As far as I know at this point, the Groundwater Summit that's scheduled for later in September, that TAG hosts annually, it is still on track. I have not heard that it's going to go to a virtual type meeting at this point, but I was told last week that the Water Development Board conference that was originally scheduled for 2 to 3 weeks following the summit has totally canceled. So I expect we may have news on the TAG event later this week. if it's going to modify, and if it does, hopefully we'll go to a local conference. Any questions or comments on this report? If not, I'll give this back to
Okay. Any questions on Kathy's report? If not, we'll move on to item number 10, General Counsel report. Brian?
Can y'all hear me? Thumbs up. Okay. Yeah, most of what we've been doing is working on, as Kathy noted, working with her and staff on the processing of all the historic use permit applications that have been submitted and all have to go through administrative and technical review. Ultimately, what that is a brief refresher on the rules. A lot of that on the front end is going back and forth with the permit applicants, trying to get all the necessary information for the general manager to come up with a recommended permit and a recommended maximum historic use amount that will ultimately be sent back to the permit applicants. But most of what's been happening right now is trying to just round up additional information that's needed from some of the permit applicants. Some of them are more difficult than others, particularly the oil and gas companies have been fairly difficult. But working on that and a few other permitting and well registration issues. On the legislative front, there's been virtually nothing happening during the pandemic. All meetings were canceled. Capitol's been shut down. Most of the House, or at least a lot of the House and Senate staff, went to work temporarily for the Workforce Commission to try to help buttress their workforce for processing all of the unemployment claims that have come. The runoff elections, as you may well be aware, have been postponed until July the 14th from the primaries. The big battle going on, if you haven't seen the newspapers, or whether they're going to allow mail-in voting so folks don't have to go to the polls and have COVID worries, and that battle's playing out in the courts right now. The speaker's race is on hold. There's no talk of that going to the Capitol. We've actually stayed in pretty good touch with the House and Senate water committees. They have really nothing going on, but the pulse seems to be that folks will start about midsummer to fire up again, thinking that the warm weather will help do something to stop or slow the spread of COVID. Stakeholder groups are starting to have discussions on legislation for next session, but those discussions have just recently started. Big thing battling the state or burdening the state right now is the impact of the oil and gas with the prices going negative even on oil and gas, and what that's going to do to the state budget. Seems to be the issue that's going to dominate, because that makes up a big chunk of the state budget, going to dominate the discussions this fall and in every subject matter area that the legislature deals with. That's about all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Brian?
Yes, I do. There was a court ruling associated with Bastrop County on harvesting groundwater. Are you familiar with that? And could you enlighten us some on that?
The Bastrop ruling on what again?
Harvesting groundwater for some other county.
Brian, I think he's referring to the recent ruling that came down on the court opinion regarding Las Pines for asphalt, where they he's using the word harvesting, but it's pumping groundwater.
Are they talking about the ALJ decision there on the LCRA
Yes.
tested case?
Yes. So Brian, can you kind of expound on that?
James, are you involved in it?
Not involved, but just watching from a distance. I don't know any details. I just know that ALJ was pretty reluctant to, I guess, to reject the permits or, modify the permits. They sent it back to, as I understand it, sent it back to the district and said, based on the evidence presented, we don't see a problem.
That's the LCRA Bastrop case.
Correct.
Yes.
Lost fines, yeah. So as you know better than me, but I think the direction from here is ALJ will provide their decision. Lost fines will decide what they want to do with that and make their final decision moving forward, I think. But I'm not an attorney. This is not legal advice.
And Brian, what Mr.
Go ahead.
Curtis was asking before the meeting is, the groundwater district, these type of rulings, how does that transition to affecting other groundwater districts as president? And I think that's really kind of where he was hoping you might expand.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not familiar with the ALJ's ruling. I hadn't had a dog in that fight, but I will familiarize myself with it.
Okay.
I think one thing to remember about that process, and again, Brian can comment if I'm in error here, but generally, the districts have a option to send these to ALJ generally. Brian, is that correct? And then ALJ will do their evidence collecting and provide some decision back, and then the districts can do with that what they want to.
Yeah, I mean, the general process there, and we'll experience it at some point when we get our first contested case hearing. Maybe we never get one. We'll see. That was a knock on wood, by the way. But a district, when you have a request for a contested case hearing on a permit application, you've got three options. You can hear the hearing as a board sitting, which is difficult to do just because of the length of, it is a trial with the entire quorum of the board sitting as the jury, basically, the judge and jury. Or you can appoint a hearings examiner, which can be somebody of your own choosing, a lawyer, a judge, or you can send it to the State Office of Administrative Hearings for an administrative law judge to do it. If a party to the hearing requests that it go to SOA, it has to go to SOA by law. And so basically you contract with SOA for an administrative law judge to conduct the trial, gather the evidence, and ultimately what they do, just like they do with a TCQ permit application, they develop findings of fact and conclusions of law in a proposal for decision, which is basically a recommendation. Here's all the facts I found. Here's all the law that I think applies as an administrative law judge. And it goes back to the board, and that proposal for decision, which is a proposal for, this is the decision I think the board should make based on the facts of the law. The board can go in a different direction than what the ALJ recommended if the board finds from the administrative record that was developed in the trial that the SOA judge made an incorrect finding of fact or an incorrect conclusion of law, but ultimately it comes back to the board for a final decision. That decision's appealable to district court. And we've seen a lot more lately, in the last few years, we've seen a lot more folks going through the SOA route just because they're set up to do administrative trials and they develop a good, clean administrative record. It just seems to cost a little more. But I'm sorry, I'm just not. The last thing I'd heard in the Bastrop case was the district court judge's ruling on the landowners that had been, that might have been on the NDOP applications, James. The landowners, when the district judge ruled that the landowners should not have been excluded as parties from the hearing. And that was headed up to the appellate court. That's the last thing I'd heard on that. But I think that was on the NDOP application maybe, and not the LCRA application. They got a lot of applications over there.
Are there other questions? Did we get close to the answer?
You got close.
Basically, have to wait and see. Yeah. Okay. If there's no other questions, we'll move on to item number 11. Open forum, discussions of new business with future meeting agendas. Anybody has anything, you can speak now or call Kathy, put it on the agenda. If not, Marty.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded that we adjourn this meeting. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Thank everyone.